Video gaming has been around for quite some time now. So have been video game consoles that have given us all those good times and brilliant characters. But in all 3 decades of their existence, it's not that always good has come out of it. With every good console that hit the market and was acclaimed, there were half a dozen that probably still rot in the sewage drain outside of your home. Now, only Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo are considered in the race of consoles, but it's hard to forget the days when Atari, Sega and a bunch of others had their way and were vying for the best places in the market with teeth-to-teeth competition. Now, those times bring good memories, but they bring the horror of the time too. Consoles that we just didn't have, consoles which were unlucky, and consoles which were etched in our memories forever to haunt us until eternity. Consoles whose burning was too vile to even witness. We are here to revisit those days and refresh the memories, because every generation must learn what the last went through to come to what it has now. Many of us were fortunate enough to be not birthed during the worst of times. What better a way to tell the legend to them? PlayStation 3. PS3, it's a damn good console, eh? Well, let's start with the less painful of the lot. The PS3 became a very successful console, but it wasn't really the case when Sony rolled out with this one in the market. The console carried on the legacy of the PS2, quite like a king turned destitute. It came with a jarring price tag of $600. That would have been compensated for with other things, if only those other things existed. The console's game lineup was insipid and drab. Considering that it was succeeding the legacy that the PlayStation 2 had created in the years prior, it was a technological faux pas. But Sony amended its ways, and we've seen a lot worse. Virtual Boy. 1995. We don't know what Nintendo had in mind when it came up with Virtual Boy. The console had everyone in a tizzy with its virtual reality experience. That virtual reality was just 3D Game Boy graphics. Way to go, invention. It came in an eye-skewing color combo of black and red, but what really had people going woozy was its display. It was red too. So that meant you could play on the console for a few minutes, put it down, and you'd have Terminator vision. Unfortunately, people of the time weren't aware, and the bins became the Virtual Boy's dwellings. The bin never saw the world's light again. Pity. Also, Nintendo didn't really stop at that. The only way to play was to lie down too. But doesn't that sound like a bonus for some of the lazy lot? No, actually. Imagine a sprightly red imp sitting on your chest with its mechanical proboscis pressing against your nose. Thankfully, no deaths were reported from a console. This beauty's failure thankfully meant not too many games, and it was priced at around $350 in current day monetary terms. RCA Studio 2. Debuting in the January of 1977, this VG console was RCA's attempt to make a place for them in the market, probably due to the success of their competitor Magnavox in this area. Although the telephone-shaped box had some technologically advanced features for that time, it lagged behind in fulfilling the main objective of any gaming console, i.e. the gaming experience. The poor graphics and sound effects made people really think that the company should have stayed in the business of making radios only. The games of the console were quite similar to that of its competitors, and tennis just seemed like a rehash of Pong. Suffice it to say that RCA should not have embarrassed itself by marketing the RCA Studio 2. Atari Jaguar. Atari had things molded in a different way in 1993. Apparently, what Panasonic did with the 3DO just wasn't enough for people to cope with, according to Atari. So, about a month later, people were treated to yet another surprise, the Atari Jaguar, a 64-bit system that was there to rip the competition apart. Instead, what it did was have a lineup of games that didn't even utilize its capabilities to the fullest. As a result, you bought a $250 system to play games that looked pretty astounding, but were disgustingly horrible to play when compared to its contemporaneous counterparts. The only few games that did actually use the console's enhanced capabilities, which were about a handful, felt odd and sluggish. With a badly utilized system that turned out to be underpowered than a crushing monstrosity with a controller having an ample serving of buttons, the Atari Jaguar was steamrolled 2 years later by the PlayStation. In Television. Launched by Atari in 1980, In Television had a torrid launch. Lacking a desirable launch-up with just 4 games in the pocket, it's no wonder that it has a presence on our list. The console died quite well later in its lifetime, selling over 3 million units and receiving over 125 games. The Sega Genesis. Sega came up with this 16-bit console in 1988. The console in itself was not that bad, it just became bad. The horrible games lineup was helped by Nintendo, who had launched Super Mario Bros. 3. A horrible lineup with a kind of clunky system meant that it didn't do what it was supposed to do as a gaming console. Best be forgot. The Panasonic 3DO. 1993 could have been a less eventful year, but Panasonic thought that things had gotten a bit too boring for the world. So what does an electronics company do when bored? You guessed it right, roll out a ridiculously priced CD-based console to garrote us, the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer. Forget the makers of the game, we doubt even if the console itself knew what it was designed for. Was it a game machine or a way to torture yourself to repulsive interactive movies? Or a way to cleanse you of your sins by buying this $1,000, adjusted according to current day inflation, piece of art? It was the Philips CDI all over again, only worse. Despite it being an outright horrific console, it had a plethora of games in its lineup, but nonetheless, the console gave us Star Control 2. We can never forget that. But the only launch title that this console got was Crash and Burn. We ought to thank the makers for the only solution they gave to us. The Philips CDI. Philips was one of the few who incorporated new technology promptly. So they came up with the Philips CDI, one of the earliest consoles to use a CD-ROM, and agreed that everyone knows that implementing new technology takes quite a toll on the companies that take the decision to inculcate them in their products. Philips sought to take advantage of this and came with a $1,000 console in 1991, a console that wasn't sure why it was born into this world. In fact, no one knew why it was brought into this world. An entertainment system, a gaming system, a trophy to have your drawing room adorned with. To put it on a pedestal to show that you have much money and not a care for what you buy. A little of all of that really, but not really any of that either. Just like its games, the console was slow and clunky. They appeared nasty and poorly done. Nothing striking was there about the console except its price tag. The game didn't appeal to gamers, nor people seeking an entertainment system. The Wii U. Nintendo's next-gen console wasn't really next-gen. The launch lineup was a mixed bag, as most of them were PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 ports. Sega Saturn. It's E3 1995, and Sega announces the Sega Saturn will launch immediately in North America. This announcement did not do any good for the company, as Sony's PlayStation was due to launch the very next week, and that too at a lower price point. Not to mention the Saturn had only 6 games at launch. Action Max. 1987 people experienced the true horror of innovation, or the lack of it, but we'd still like to call it innovation. A very different innovation that nobody really understood. This wonder of the world gaming console was launched into the market by World of Wonder. This box came with a clunky gun, and the console played some VHS tapes that had movies in it. In these movies were strobing targets that were to be shot with that gun. Did we miss anything? No, that's about all the console did. It had a truly tremendous game lineup of 5 whole tapes. 5! So, the next time you mention any of these names and see someone flinch, please go to them and offer your respects, for they've survived an era that some of us can only imagine with horror. Did we miss out on any console? Let us know in the comments below. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing. We appreciate your support and we thank you for checking us out.